Hi everyone, let's talk about the past perfect and the past perfect progressive. These are actually two pretty common verb forms that are used in writing, especially academic writing. Let's look at how to make them and then we'll talk about when they are used. All right, here we go. Okay, so let's look at the past perfect first. To create the past perfect, you really just need two things. The first thing you need is had, that's it, had. And then you need the past participle of any verb, whatever verb you're trying to use, you just need the past participle form of that verb. But what is that? What is the past participle? Okay, the past participle is the third form of the verb. Wait, what's that? Okay, so what I usually explain to my students is when they study a verb, they study the simple present, the simple past, and then the past participle. So for example, like you have see, saw, seen. Simple present, simple past, past participle. See, saw, seen. Eat, ate, eaten. The third one is the past participle. Eaten, seen, written, write, wrote, written. And sometimes they're regular as well. So decide, decided, decided. So that's what it looks like. So in a sentence, I might say, I had decided to study Spanish before I went to college. Or I had eaten lunch before I made this video. Or we had seen the movie before it came out on the internet. That is the past perfect. Now, with the past perfect progressive, we have had again, but this time because it's progressive, we need to have be plus verb ing. However, because it's perfect, we have to have the past participle form of be. So that's where been comes. You just need to remember that you always have to have had, you always have to have been, and then whatever verb you want to use, except you can't use non-action verbs when you use the past perfect progressive. Non-action verbs are verbs that we cannot use with ing, like knowing. I had been knowing? No, I had known. Understand? I had been understanding? No, I had understood. You can only use progressive action verbs in the past perfect progressive, like running. I had been running for many years before I ran the race. Okay, so let's look at some examples. I had been running. Here's had, here's been, here's the verb plus ing. If we put that over here with the past perfect, it looks very similar. I had run. Here's the had, here's the past participle. That's it. That's how you make affirmative statements with these forms. How do you make them negative? It's actually pretty easy because remember, when you make a negative statement in English, you need a helping verb to do that. In this case, we already have a helping verb because had is a helping verb. It's an auxiliary verb. We already have the help. So all we need to do to make it negative is add not. And where do we add the not? We always add it right after the helping verb. So I had not run, or I had not been running. You just add it right after the helping verb to make it negative. But what about yes, no questions and WH questions? How do we use the past perfect and the past perfect progressive for those ones? Let's look at a yes/no question for a past perfect statement. So we can say had, and then the subject, and then the past participle of whatever verb you're using. So let's say, had you studied English before? Okay. Had you, subject, studied, past participle. Had you studied English before? Over here, I can ask the same thing with the same verb. Had you been studying English? Okay. Had plus you plus been plus verb ing. Now, I will talk about the difference between these two sentences because there is a little bit of a difference. But right now, I'm just showing you how to create the form for the past perfect and past perfect progressive. And that is how you make yes/no questions. What about WH questions? Well, that one's actually sort of easy too. It's the same structure. Now you just add the WH word before the helping verb. So you just add WH word, then had, subject, been, verb, ing. So when had you been studying English? Or over here too, WH word plus had, subject, past participle. You can say where had you studied English before? And that's how you make a WH question in the past perfect or past perfect progressive. Now let's talk about when. Why? Why do we even have this form? Why not just use simple past? Okay, let's talk about it. Honestly, probably 90% of the time, 95% of the time, you can just use the simple past or past progressive if you want to make it progressive, and people will understand you. Your meaning is clear. There are certain times where we want to be even more specific about when something happened and when something else happened. And it also really helps you have more control over what you're saying to be able to make that clear. So, of course, you can use a simple past and say, I studied English before I moved to the United States. But you can also say, I had studied English before I moved to the United States. The meaning is exactly the same, but what in the world? What? Why? Okay, let's talk about it. Okay, so let's take a look at these three sentences. I studied English before I came to the United States. Here I have two verbs in the simple past. Simple past, simple past. What am I saying? I'm saying one thing happened in the past and another thing happened in the past. Which one started first? This one was first. And then that one happened. But they're both finished. They both happened in the past. So it would look like this on a chart. First, I studied English. Then I came to the United States. And now I'm here in the present. This is the past. This is the present. This is the future. Now, over here, I had studied English before I came to the United States. Again, I have two verbs, two actions. Both are in the past. One happened before the other one. And this one happened before this one. But check out the difference. Here I'm using the past perfect. Here I'm using the simple past. It's much more clear to the listener, to the reader, to the speaker, to everyone that this action happened and finished before this action. Why? Because we're using the past perfect. It just emphasizes the fact that this one happened first. And that's why we use it. So sometimes it's really important to emphasize which one happened first. So on my chart, it would look just like this. Past, present, future. We have one action happened before the other action. I had studied before I came to the United States. All this happened in the past. Here I am now in the present. Finally, we have this one. I had been studying, past perfect progressive. I had been studying English before I came to the United States. Now, this one's a little bit different. It focuses on what was in progress before something else happened. So this one was first, just like these ones. This one happened first, and then this one happened second, and they're both done. They're both finished. But the difference here is that now we're focusing on this action being in progress for a while. And it's important to focus on this action because the writer or the speaker wanted to emphasize that that action happened for a while. Whereas here, you just say something happened before something else. Here, we are saying something was in progress and maybe finished or maybe got interrupted by something else. I had been studying English before I moved to the United States, and maybe I continued after that, but what matters is that I had been studying. I was doing that thing before this thing happened. So that's the difference. Couldn't I just use the past progressive and say I was studying English before I came to the United States? Yes, absolutely. You can do that. I was studying. We use the past progressive. I was studying English before I came to the United States. Yeah, same thing. People use it often, like most of the time, especially in speaking. But in writing, you might want to really emphasize what thing happened before the other. And also, it is more formal to use the past perfect and the past perfect progressive than to just use simple past or past progressive. Not to say those are not formal, but these are pretty, they just sound more academic because they're often used in writing and not so much in speaking, although you can use them when you speak too. So that's really the main difference there, and that's when we use them. Another thing is you don't have to have two actions in the past to use past perfect or past perfect progressive. You can have an action that happened before a specific time, and usually we use the words before and by the time with the past perfect and past perfect progressive. So, for example, here's what the past perfect and past perfect progressive look like with those time words. Before I moved to the United States, I had studied English. This word before really helps us understand that this thing was second and that this thing was first. Before I did this thing, I had already done that thing. Before I did this thing, I had already done this thing. First, second. You could also say, by the time I moved to the USA, I had studied English. You could add the word already. Already even more emphasizes that something happened before something else. So you can say already right here between the helping verb and the main verb. Here, by the time I moved to the USA, I had been studying English, or I had already already been studying English. That emphasizes, that word emphasizes that this thing was already in progress before, by the time this thing happened. So again, it looks like this. By the time I moved to the USA, before that, I had been studying English. I had already been studying English. Okay, and that is how you use those two forms. All right, good luck with them.